Hey, welcome back. Travis Monson here with Once Upon a Board Game. And my kids have always told me I should start a play games where they were meant to be played series. Well, guess what? We just visited the Alhambra, or Alhambra, however you want to pronounce it. It's freaking amazing, right? Great place. It's just down over there. But what better game to play than the actual game inspired by the place, right? So I'm going to teach you how to play this game, and then we'll talk about it. Thanks. Okay, so once again, I'm going to be teaching Alhambra. So we'll start with the setup. Okay, so first of all, I've got kind of the pieces laid out here. The game comes with a scoreboard that you track the scores of each player. There's 3 different scoring rounds over the course of the game, so you can kind of just set that off to the side to start. There's the market board. There's going to be a deck of money cards, which I'll come back to that in just a second. There's a couple of scoring cards that get inserted into these, trigger the scoring rounds. There's a reserve board for each of the 6 players. There's each player's starting tile. There's player markers, score markers, and player markers. And then there's a bag to put all of the building tiles in. Okay, you just would mix them all up and throw them all in there. I'll get to that in just a second. Okay, one of the things I want to mention though is part of the setup. Okay, so there's a deck of cards. There are 4 different color currencies. There's the yellow and orange and green and blue, like you can see here. And there's, they all have official names. I think it's dinar and ducat and florin and, something like that. But we just usually call them by the, by the color. It's hard to remember which is which. But there are numbers 1 through 9 in each currency. And there's 3 of every single card. Okay, so there's a deck of 108 cards. One important note is if you're playing with a 2-player game, you'll take out exactly 1 of each card. So you'll take out 36 cards, the 1 through 9 and the 4 suits. So you have a deck of 72 instead of 108. Okay, otherwise you'll have the full deck for 3 or more players. Okay, one of the final things as part of setup is each person gets their starting currency. Okay, so you take the deck of cards, you shuffle it up, of course. And once you've done that, you flip over cards for each player until each player has received at least $20 in total currency. Okay, so for instance, let's say we're doing a 3-player game. This person, there's a 9 and a 5, that's 14. 14 and 7 is 21. So that person has 20 or more, so that would be that person's starting currency. Second player, they've got 5 and 8, that's 13. Plus 9 is 22. So that's that player's starting currency. They've got more than 20. And then the third player, you got 8 and 5, that's 13. And 5 is 18. And 3 is 21. So that's more than 20, 20 or more, that's good for that player. Okay, so once you've gotten your starting currency, that you can pick up your cards and hold them. You only lay it out like this to get that initial starting money. And the rules say that the starting player is the person with the fewest number of cards. Okay, in the case of a tie, both these people have 3. Whoever has the lower amount would go first. So this person has 21. This person has 22. So this person would be, player 1 would be the start player. Does that make sense? Okay. So each person has, their starting currency. So they can hold those, they can hold the money, set it off to the side. Then you're going to lay out 4 cards as the starting market of currency, which is important for some of the actions during the game. I'll put them face up here. Okay, so you lay out 4 cards, and then you prepare the rest of the deck with the scoring cards. So it says roughly you divide it into 5 piles. It says roughly, it doesn't give you an exact number because you never know exactly how many cards are going to get used to do all of this kind of stuff. So you take roughly 5 piles, 5 even-sized piles. Roughly, I kind of just stick them down and see if they're about the same size. That's roughly equal. And then it says you take the scoring cards, you see scoring round A and scoring round B. So scoring round A, you'll shuffle it into the second deck. So it just gets mixed in here somewhere. Okay, and then the same thing with the 4th deck with the second scoring card. So that gets mixed in there somewhere. And then you stack all the cards. So the bottom, and then the deck with the second round scoring card, and then that, and then the first round scoring card, and then the rest of the cards. So that guarantees that roughly maybe a third of the way through the deck is the first scoring round, and 2/3 of the way through the deck is the second scoring round, is when those get triggered. Okay, and then you'll draw from the bag 4 tiles. Whenever you replace the market board, You always replace it in the order 1, 2, then 3, then 4. So we'll put a tile there. We'll put a tile there. We'll put a tile there and a tile there. I'll do this just for some variety. Okay, I do want to show some of these tiles. Okay, let me just lay them down here. There are 6 different types of buildings. We need just, there we go. There's all 6 colors. Perfect. All right, so this is one thing I want to point out on a scoring board, okay? It has a little player summary. First of all, it shows the 6 types of buildings in the game, okay? It shows you how many of each building are in the game, okay? So for the blue and the red, there's 7 of each of those buildings. For the brown and the white, there's 9 of each of those buildings. And for the green and the purple, there's 11 of each of those buildings, okay? So you know how common they are, you know, in the deck, in the bag. And then it also gives a summary of the points it will be awarded for majorities in the first scoring round, the second scoring round, and the third scoring round at the end of the game, which I'll explain that in a minute. Okay? Each player will grab one of these reserve boards. So with a 3-player game, each person will, so I'll put one over there for player 1 and player 2 and player 3, right? And I want to just mention some of these cards really quick. Okay? So you see, there's the 6 kind of buildings. There's always a number. The number is going to refer to the cost to buy it, which we'll get to that in a second. Some have no walls and some have walls built. Sometimes it's as few as, you know, few as 1 wall, or maybe there's 2 walls or 3 walls, like I said. So you have all kinds of varieties like that, okay? So just that's for, just for an example of what some of the tiles look like. Okay, finally, each player will take a starting tile, and I'll just put these little reserves off to the side because they're not needed as often. Okay, so we'll say this person's is up here, and this person's is here. Okay, the rest we don't need. Okay, finally, we'll say we got a red and a blue and a green. So the red player, so one, you put it on their little tile so everybody knows who is what color, and then one goes on the scoreboard. So then there's the green player and the blue player. Okay, these ones are extra. All right, so a couple of things. On your turn, so now we're ready to play. So that's the setup, okay? So now, once you start playing, and again, this person had the fewest cards and the least money, so they go first. And on your turn, you have 3 options of what you can do. You can either take money, or you can buy a card, buy a tile rather, or you can redesign your Alhambra. Okay, let me explain each of those. If you take money, okay, you never draw from the drawdown the face down deck. You can only draw from what's visible. Okay, and you can take any one card and put it in your hand, or as long as the cards do not add up to more than 5, you can take multiple cards. So this person, they say, you know what, I want to take cards. They could simply take a 9, for instance, right? Or maybe they say, you know what, I want to take a 1 and a 4. Because that adds up to 5, or maybe a 1 and a 3. They could do that, right? So your options are any one card or multiple cards, as long as they do not add up to more than 5. Okay, that's the take cards option. Okay, as soon as they're done, it will be refilled for the next player. Okay, so that's the draw cards option. At some point, when you're refilling, after somebody's turn, you're going to draw one of those little scorecards. And when that gets drawn, you pause the game to do an immediate scoring round. And we'll get to those in a second, okay? So that's the draw cards phase. Next option is you can buy cards, okay? And again, on the market board, it shows you the tiles. Like I said, all the tiles have a number, which is the cost. And on the market board, it also shows you what currency. So to buy this tile, I would have to pay 10 or more. You can overpay. I'd have to pay 10 or more in yellow. This would cost 6 in blue, 6 in orange, and 13 in green, if that makes sense, okay? So if you want to buy, you would take your cards and you would, of course, just pay. You can make a discard pile wherever you want. Now, one thing that's really important to notice is you can always overpay, but you don't get change, right? You never get money back. So you want to try and be as exact as possible. So for instance, this player could say, you know what, I want to pay 7 and take this tile, because it costs 6, right? So they overpaid, they don't get the $1 back, but that's fine, they can do that. Or conversely, they could say, you know what, I'm really overpaying, It's again, it's an overpayment, but I can pay 14 to take this, right? So they could go either route, okay? So let's just say they paid this, they take this, because you know the towers are maybe worth more points. So initially you'll set the tile aside for a second, and again, that's the player's whole turn. Once, like basically at the end of your turn, that's when you add tiles to your Alhambra. And again, so when I'll just build it down here to show really quick, okay? When you add tiles to your Alhambra, there's a couple of rules, okay? First of all, and I'll just grab all these tiles just so I can show you an example of building, okay? First of all, the tiles have to be rotated, I mean, they have to be upright, you know, so you can see the name of the building and so everything is face up. I cannot rotate it to make it fit better, okay? It has to stay face up. You see the little diagonal lines in the background, those are all gonna line up, right? So the tile has to be upright. Also, you have to touch it to a side, okay? So I cannot do something like that. I have to touch it to the side. And also, again, some tiles have walls, some don't. You cannot put a wall against a non-wall. That's illegal. You know, that's fine. There's no wall and no wall. That's fine. So, you know, all those are fine, but I cannot do that, okay? Another important rule is you always have to be able to, I think it's called the on foot rule, right? So in essence, you have to be able to walk anywhere in your Alhambra without exiting the Alhambra. You know, so for instance, you know, if I had placed the tile, let me see if I can do a quick example. So if I had done something like this, right? That's legal. And then this theoretically would be legal because it's touching the side, a wall is touching a wall, everything looks good. However, there's no way to get, you know, to this tile because there's a wall. I'd have to exit the Alhambra to get there. Does that make sense? So everything has to be reachable on foot for any person so you could walk anywhere in the Alhambra without having to leave it. So this would not be legal. I'd have to do something like that. That is legal, right? Now I can still get there. The walls, the non-wall, everything matches up, that's fine. But that is not because of that on foot rule. Does that make sense? Okay. One other important thing is you can never create, and again, I'm doing illegal placement here just to show you. If you ever do something like this, you can never create a hole, okay? You can never leave an empty hole in the middle of your Alhambra, okay? So with all those, you know, with those exceptions aside, you can put your tile wherever you want. So again, I think it was like this, right? Okay, so the person bought this tile. So at the end of your turn, that's when you can place it to your Alhambra. And so he'll just say, you know what, I'll do that. So that's legal, and that's that person's turn. He bought, okay? At the end of their turn, you would refill the deck of cards if they took cards, or you would refill if they bought buildings. So you'll draw another building and replace it, okay? Then you go around clockwise, so it'd be this person's turn next, and they're saying, okay, what do I want to do? They don't have a lot of great options. You know, they could really overpay, could pay 8 for the building that costs 6. They don't have enough for the orange building. They could double pay for that. That doesn't sound good for them. So they say, you know what, I'll take a better option. Maybe I'll take a 1 and a 4. So they choose to draw cards for their turn. There's no hand limit. You can have any number of cards in your hand, okay? So there's no limit. So that's their turn, okay? Again, we refill for the currency that was taken. And then the next person goes, and I say, you know what, I got all blue. Again, I would be really overpaying. Maybe I'll say, I'll just draw a 9, for instance. Okay, so that was my turn. I drew a card. Okay, then it comes back to Allie, and she's like, okay, I've got not much money. Oh, who knows? Maybe I'll just take an 8. I'll try and get a big money card. So that's her turn. Comes back. Let's say this is Jace. Comes over here, and he says, okay. You know what? This is one thing I want to illustrate. This is great. Jay says, wow, okay, I have 4, it costs 4. This is perfect because if you ever manage to pay the exact amount, you get an extra turn, okay? So Jace paid 4 green for something that costs 4. So he sets this aside for a second, and because he paid the exact amount, he can go again. You do not replace this until the end of his turn. So he can either take another turn to draw cards, or he can buy another building, or he could do a little remodel of his Alhambra, which I haven't even mentioned yet. I'll get to that in 1 second. So he says, you know what? For my extra turn, maybe I'll just I'll draw cards. So I'll draw this, for instance. So that's his turn, okay? And then he ends his turn by adding the tile to his Alhambra, okay? So you refill and you refill, okay? So again, so I've basically illustrated two of the options of, the taking cards. And again, you can take multiple cards like Jace did if it adds up to 5 or less, or you can just take a single card, but never from the face down deck. And again, you can buy tiles. You'd have to pay the cost in that color currency. And if you overpay, that's fine, but you get no change, and that's your turn. If you pay the exact amount, you get an extra turn. So at most, you could get 5 turns, because you could buy all 4 buildings for the exact price, and then you would get still that extra bonus turn for which you could either draw cards or maybe do a little remodel of your Alhambra. Okay, so that's kind of the basic flow of turns. So I'm just gonna grab a couple of tiles here to show you what a remodel of your Alhambra might look like. So let's say maybe previously I had built some of these tiles. Let's just say my Alhambra was looking like this, okay? Maybe after a few turns, it looked like this. All right, and now let's say maybe I wanted to buy, this building. And I says, oh, wow, you know what? I really want this. It's gonna help me. I can finally get a green building, but where to put it? It can't fit there because there's a wall and a no wall. It can't fit in any of those spots. It could, the walls match up, but again, I'd have to leave the Alhambra to get there. So that the on foot rule doesn't let me put it there. It doesn't go here. It doesn't go here. It doesn't go there because the wall doesn't match up with a non-wall. So literally, there's nowhere that I could put this in my Alhambra. It doesn't fit, okay? So I have 2 options. First of all, first and foremost, if you buy something that doesn't fit, you can always put it in your reserve, okay? So maybe the turn that I bought that's what I did. I put it in my reserve, okay? There's no limit. You can have any number of tiles in your reserve, but in terms of scoring, they do not score because they have not been built, okay? So anything in your reserve does not score, okay? But I'm gonna show you what a remodel turn might look like, okay? You have 3 options when you remodel. You can either take a tile off of your Alhambra and put it in reserve. That's your turn. That's a remodel. Take one off, put it in reserve. Conversely, I can take a tile from the reserve and put it in my Alhambra, right? I can do that. That's a legal remodel. So take one off, that's your turn, or put one on, that's your turn. Or if you can do it this way, this is the best way to remodel. You can do an exact swap of tiles. So I could do this, for instance. I could flop these 2 tiles. That would be a remodel. It'd have to go in the exact place where I took it from. But again, that fits. The walls match up, everything else works. So that would be legal. I could do that. So those are your options for remodel. So again, your turn, take money or buy a tile and build it to your Alhambra with those rule restrictions, with keep it face up, the walls match the non-walls, be able to reach there on foot, all that kind of stuff, and don't create any holes. And then your other turn is to remodel. Take a tile off or put a tile on or do a flip-flop, okay? So those are your options on your turn. All right, so now I'll explain scoring. Okay, so let's say we've fast-forwarded a little bit. We've taken a bunch more turns, so we've all, Allie and mine and Jace's Alhambras maybe look like this to this point in the game. And then maybe Jace took his turn by just drawing money, right? So then we replace the deck. Oh, it's a scoring card, okay? So we'll go ahead and refill the deck, but we set this aside for a second, okay? The fact that this came out means we pause the game and we score, okay? Let me show you how scoring works. So first of all, you're gonna score, first of all, majorities in the 6 types of buildings, and then you also score for your longest perimeter wall of your Alhambra, okay? So I'll explain this. All right, so first of all, in this first scoring round, you look for the blue buildings, the person with the majority is gonna score a point. So let's move this scorecard in just a little bit here, okay? So we look, blue buildings. Allie has none, I have none, Jace does have 1. So he has the majority, he has the most blue buildings, he scores a point. So the blue player scores 1 point, right? Then you look, the red majority scores 2 points, okay? Allie has none, I have 1, Jace has 1. Oh, we have a tie. Whenever there's a tie, you share the points evenly, rounded down, okay? So 2 points divided by 2 players, we each get 1 point. So Jace gets 1 point and I get 1 point, okay? Then you look, brown majority will score 3 points. Allie's got a brown, I've got a brown, Jace has a brown. Wow, it's a 3-way tie. We would divide the 3 points, we each get 1 point. If it was a 2-way tie, you know, the 1.5 points would still round down to 1, so you get the gist. But in this case, we all 3 are gonna get 1 point for the brown. The white majority is gonna get 4 points. Allie has 2, I have 2. Wow, I didn't mean to set this up with so many ties, but that's kind of good. Okay, so we would split the 4 points, we each get 2. So I get 2 points and Allie gets 2 points, okay? The green, the gardens, the majority gets 5 points. Allie has 2 gardens, I have 1, Jace has none. So Allie would get the majority, she gets the 5 points for green. So Allie goes from 3 to 8. And then finally, the purple, the towers, the majority gets 6 points, okay? Allie has 1, I have 1, Jace has 2. So Jace has a majority, he gets the full 6 points. So he goes from 3 also to 9, okay? So that's the building majorities. And then we also score your longest perimeter wall. And this scores at the end of each round. So again, and I want to point out this too. There's this wall in the middle of the Alhambra, and that's legal because when we placed it, you know, a wall touched a wall, you can still get there by foot, right? So everything's good there. That's legal, okay? All right, so perimeter wall, your longest, and again, if you have multiple exterior walls, you only score your longest. So right now, Allie has on her perimeter 1, 2, 3 sections of her wall. So she would score 3 points for that wall. So she would move up 1, 2, 3 more points, okay? I think they were at 8. Anyway, I've got a wall here that's 1, 2, 3 sections long, or I also have one over here that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This wall is clearly longer, so I would score 6 points for that wall. So the green player gets 6, I go from 4 to 10. And then over here, Jace, he's got a wall that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sections long. So he also would score 6 points. So the 1, that's not his longest wall. So he would score the 6 points for this wall. So he scores 6 points also. 8 and 6 is 14. That's the scoring. Okay, so we'd score the majorities in each building and your longest perimeter wall. And then you would continue, right? And since Jace triggered it, you know, when I was trying to refill for my turn, I do the card, then it would come to me. I would take the next turn, and again, I would take money or buy a tile or do a little remodel of my Alhambra, okay? So I want to just show you maybe one more scoring round to show you when you score multiple players. So let's fast forward to the second scoring round. Okay, so a little bit further on into the game, we can see we've built a little bit more. And let's say that I just took my turn. Maybe I want to get some smaller currencies so that I can have exact change to hopefully get a bonus turn. So I took 2 cards because it adds up to 5, right? So I take the money, we refill. Oh, there's the scoring card. Okay, so we'll set that by Allie to remember that she's gonna get the next turn since I just went, right? So now we pause the game, and now we do the same thing as before. We're gonna score majorities in buildings and your longest perimeter wall, okay? There's a couple of important distinctions now. Now, in the second round, there's points for first place and second place. And once again, you would split tied players would split the points of the 2 tied players. So I'll just walk through how this would score. So let's look blue, okay? And just for everyone's reference too, not only on the scoring card, but also on each player's reserve board, it shows, in addition to the number of each type of tile, it shows what the points are for the first majority, or for the first scoring round and the second scoring round and the third scoring round at the end of the game. So each player can see that, you know, over the course of the game. Okay, but looking at blue, Allie's got 1, I've got none, Jace has 2. So Jace has the majority. Jace would score 8 points. 14 and 8 is 22. Allie would get the 1 point for second place. Allie would get 1. Red, Allie's got 2, I've got 2, Jace has 1. Okay, we're tied for first place. Since there's 2 people tied, we would take the 2 places of points. So with the first and second place points. So we would take the 9 and the 2 points, that's 11 points. We would split those 11 points evenly between us. Divide it, 5.5, round down, we each score 5. Okay, so Allie gets 5, and I get 5. Okay? And since there was already 2 people, we've already used up both first and second place points, Jace would score nothing for red. Does that make sense? Okay, so for 2 tied players, you would add up the points for the 2 places that are tied. Then brown. Allie's got 1 brown. I've got 1 brown. Jace has 2 browns. So Jace gets the majority. He gets 10 points. Jace is killing us. So he goes to 32. And then Allie and I, tied for second, we would split the second place. We would split the 3 points. 1.5, round down, we each get 1. So she gets 1 and I get 1. White, I've got 4 white. Allie's got 2, Jace has none. I get the full 11 points, so 16 to 27. And Allie would get 4 points for second place. So she goes from 18 to 22. Then green, Allie's got 3, I've got 3, Jace has 2. So we do the same thing we did with red. We would add up the points for first and second place since 2 people are tied. So 17 divided in by 2 for 2 tied players, 8.5, round down. We each get 8 points. Allie gets 8, 22 and 8 is 30, and I get 8, 27, 8 is 35. Okay, and then for towers, for the purple, Allie's got 2, I've got 1, Jace has 3. So Jace gets first place. He gets the full amount of 13 points. So 32 and 13 is 45. And Allie would get the full second place points. She'd get a full 6 points. So she would get from 30 to 36. Okay? So we've done the building majorities. So now also we score perimeter walls. And this is one other important thing that didn't come up before. When you're scoring perimeter walls, you only score the perimeter. If you have back-to-back walls that jut into your Alhambra, like right here, those do not count because it's an interior wall. It's not a perimeter. So even though this is all still connected, you would only stay on Allie's longer outer wall. So if she looked up here, that's 3, that's not her longest. This is 2, that's not it. Here is just 2, and then it stops. So her longest one is going to be here. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections long. Again, we do not count interior walls. So Allie would score 5 points for her longest perimeter wall. So she gets 5 more, 36 and 5, 41. My longest wall would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We don't count that. 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. I had a really long, really good wall. So 15 points for my wall. 35 and 15, 50. And then Jace also has a long wall. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Again, we don't count the interior. 10, 11, 12. So Jace would score 12. 45 and 12 is 57. So that would be the second scoring round. And then Allie would continue with her turn, right? And so on, okay? So you keep playing. And finally, those were the only 2 scoring cards in the deck, right? So there's no way to trigger that third and final scoring round. So the way that you trigger the end of the game is when the tiles, let's say it's like this, okay? These have all been bought and built, okay? So let's say maybe on Allie's turn, she paid exact money. Maybe she says, I'm gonna pay 3 to get this, right? So she gets this tile and she paid exact, so she gets a bonus turn. So she says, you know what? Maybe she's gonna overpay and she pays like 11 for this, for instance, okay? So she bought 2 tiles, okay? And again, this is another important thing I wanna mention. If you buy, like, because of the paying exact, if you buy multiple tiles, you don't actually have to add the tiles to your Alhambra till the end of your turn. So you can, even though I bought this one second, she could put this one on first if it helps for placement purposes, if that makes sense, okay? So again, you add the tiles at the end of your turn so you can add them in whatever order. Okay, so Allie's turn is over. And when you go to refill, again, you refill always in numerical order. So the one would get refilled first. So we refill it. And then all of a sudden, oh, there's no more tiles. We cannot refill the board, okay? At that point, the end of the game is triggered when there's not enough tiles to refill the market. So before that third and final scoring, we basically, we auction off the remaining tiles. So whoever has the most currency in each type would get it. So looking at the game right now, Allie has 8 in yellow. I have 9 in yellow. Jace has 1 in yellow. I have the most, I would get this tile. Okay, so I set it aside for a second. Okay, in green, Allie has no green. Okay, I have 3 green, and Jace has 21 green. Jace clearly has the most green. Jace gets this tile. He'll set it aside for a moment. In orange, Jace has 5. I have 2. And Allie has 7. So Allie has the most orange. So we can set aside the cards for a second. Allie gets the most there, okay? So now, once they're all done, now we get to do that final. We can add it to our Alhambra, wherever it fits best. You know, Allie might want to just put it there, for instance. I can put this here, you know, whatever. And then Jace doesn't even have a place. This won't even fit legally. So he may have built differently, but this won't fit because the wall doesn't match up. It's an exterior wall. Doing this, you'd have to leave the Alhambra to get to it. So none of those work. So Jace would have to leave that aside, and that would not count towards his majorities. And at this point, once you've auctioned off the remaining tiles, you do that third and final scoring. Only this time, you also have points for third place. You score first and second and third for each of the majorities, and then once again, your longest perimeter wall. And again, if there's tied players, you would add up the points and divide them evenly. Okay? So hopefully that helps you understand, you know, kind of how it works and how the scoring works. Again, a couple of rules to keep in mind. You can draw multiple cards as long as it adds up to 5 or less, right? That's a good option. And it's really good to draw some of those smaller currencies because it helps you get the exact change to buy buildings. Because again, as a quick reminder, if you can pay the exact amount, I can buy that tile and get a bonus action. And your bonus action can be any of the choices: draw currency, or buy an additional tile, or perform a remodel option, you know, remodel action. And again, the remodels, it's either take a single tile off, or put one on, or do an exact flip-flop of tiles. Those are your options for remodel. And that's it. And again, highest score at the end of the third scoring round is gonna win. So that's the game. Before I end the video, I just want to mention really briefly a little variation for 2 players. I mentioned at the very beginning that for 2 players, you would basically take out 1/3 of the deck. So you take out 1 of each different card. So there's, you know, that's 36 total cards, the 1 through 9 in each of the 4 suits. So you have a deck of 72 cards instead of the full 108. So that's one of the differences that you make. The second thing is basically you have an imaginary third player. So at the start of the game, you would mix up all the tiles, put in the bag, and you would just draw 6 tiles out and just set them aside. Okay, whatever 6 they are. Let's say we drew these 6 tiles, okay? And then you just basically, you just keep track of what they have. You don't arrange them in an Alhambra. You don't have to worry about walls or anything. It only counts for like majorities, okay? And so at the end of the first scoring round, we would say like, how many reds do we have versus this? It's in terms of scoring, you would count that imaginary third player's tiles for scoring majorities, okay? But you don't count walls. They only count for majorities. So that's after the first round. Right before, so right after you've scored the first round, you'll draw 6 more. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So when you count the second majority, they're gonna have, you know, more tiles. So you basically, you're competing against, you know, another player in terms of how many tiles they have. So, you know, so to have majority, I'd have to have, you know, 4 or more tiles in purple and so forth, okay? So you do that for the second round. Again, you don't worry about walls, only the points for majorities and the colors. And then right before, so after you've done the second scoring round, right before you kind of count that, you begin that third phase of the game, you count how many tiles are left in the bag, and you take 1/3 of them rounded down, give to that person, that imaginary player. You know, so like in this case, if this is what was left after the first 2 scoring rounds, we see there's what? There's 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 16. 16 divided by 3, you know, it's 5 1/3. Round down 5. He would get 5 more tiles. And so in terms of majorities at the end of the game, that's how many tiles this imaginary player would have. So again, he wouldn't ever score walls, but wow, he'd probably get majorities in purple and brown. So that's how it works for 2 players. The rest of it, you know, you're basically just playing you against the other person, but when you're counting majorities, you're gonna look at what that imaginary third player has. So that's the rules for 2 players. Other than that, everything else plays the exact same. Just fewer cards and tiles for majorities for that imaginary third player. Otherwise, it's exactly the same. All right, so that's Alhambra. And I know in my intro, I didn't say Alhambra or Alhambra, however you want to pronounce it, but I will have you know that I talked to the Spaniards while we were there, and I specifically asked, and they confirmed what I always thought. It is Alhambra. You do not say the H. So Alhambra. Anyway, this is a fabulous game. It's super family friendly. Back in 2003, it won the German Game of the Year, the Spiel des Jahres, and it's one of those great games that is kind of timeless. You know, it never really loses its appeal. Over the years, there have been tons of expansion, little packs set for it, and it comes in. This actually is the rule book, as you can see from a big box edition of it. But anyway, there's so much different stuff you can add in, little modules to tweak little bits of the rules to make it complex or more family friendly, more easy or more difficult, whatever you want. You can combine a whole bunch of them or just play it just kind of the standard vanilla game like I showed. But it's super fun. It goes up to 6 players, and it's one that we've had for years, and it's pretty much one that we've always enjoyed. So hopefully this has been helpful for you. Hopefully this has helped you to learn how to play the game and how to score, and hopefully how to have an idea of how to do well in the game. And yeah, once again, Travis Monson with Once Upon a Board Game. Thanks for watching.